What's going on, guys? This is Kai Shiro. Welcome back. So we are back with another video. On this video, we're going to cover the Philippines OCG Metagame tier list for March 2024. So we are approaching the end of the tunnel in our January format. We are approaching the April ban list very soon. I think the ban list will drop on the 3rd week or 4th week of March this month. So this will be the final hurrah of the decks on January format. And also, by the way, this is post-LEDE or Legacy of Destruction. So we can see the impact of Legacy of Destruction in our OCG metagame scene. So disclaimer before we proceed on our video, this tier list was only reference and limited towards the data that I have gathered on the recent article and report and analysis that I have made on our OCG metagame. So these decks are limited towards that data, and I do think that it will not really represent the whole OCG metagame in the Asia, but I think this will be only good reference and tool for us in the Philippines to identify which decks are performing well in the format, and also for the viewers to understand how the OCG meta functions right now. So without further ado, let's start. So we have S, A, B, C, and D tiers. So we will start first on D tier. Coming at first, we have Sky Striker. So I do think that most people are still not giving up on the deck, especially the devoted players of Sentuki or Sky Striker. So they're still managing to do quite well, no, on the format, despite that many meta decks out there are very fast and high tempo for them. I think Sky Striker does fall off behind in terms of pace, but if they're really skilled at the game, they can manage their resources really well on Sky Striker. They can be immaculate on their timings of their hand traps and interactions. I do think that they still have a slim chance to combat the best decks on the format right now, but it's very hard, to be honest. That's why I only rank Sky Striker on D tier, even though it has representations, because I do think that the deck is very dependent on the skill level of the pilot. It can really be worse than any other decks on the format, even worse than rogue decks if the pilot is not skilled. But if a Sky Striker player is really good on the game, I think the deck can really have a solid chance around the meta right now. Next, we have Adamantipator on D tier, another tricky deck to discuss in our report here, but I do think that Adamantipator is very strong when going first. Adaman is a very solid deck that can set up multiple negations, Barone, Apollousa, Savage, and IP going to SP. I think that board is enough to handle the best decks right now, and if this deck can go first, and if your opponent doesn't have hand traps to stop you, and they don't have Maxi to interrupt you, of course, you will definitely steamroll them on this deck. And also, Adamantipator can be very tricky to build on our format right now, because you do have a lot of options on the Earth Toolbox, and something like Super Heavy Samurai, and the Ishizu cards, and also Ishizu mainly Mudora only, and Keldo. But yeah, I do have a lot of references to look at on our Adamantipator, and they're very distinct, and it varies a lot. There's a lot of variation towards the deck of Adamantipator right now. Whether you play 60 or 40 or 50, it really depends on the pilot. And I do think that it's a very good contributor towards the success of Adamantipator in our metagame, because there's a lot of variation, and it's really hard to identify the choke points of Adamantipator, because the deck list really varies a lot, and there's a lot of engines going on towards the deck, and it's really hard to stop them one by one. So yeah, on D tier we have Adaman. Next, we have Vanquish Shoal. So Vanquish Shoal has been relatively successful in the Philippines landscape. We have Lauren Vidal, a Vanquish Shoal top player in the country. We also have Joshua Coriano playing Vanquish Shoal on high-stake events like the recent Azrak tournament, which had 70 plus person tournament. And I do think that Vanquish Shoal is very decent on their own. They do have a lot of space on the main deck, and the deck is really good on expressing your skill level in the game. It really complements your level of playing in the game using Vanquish Shoal. And also, Vanquish Shoal can definitely answer most of the meta decks out here because they can benefit from playing Ghost Bell and other dark cards and fire cards on the deck to boost the ceiling of the deck by revealing those cards towards their line of play, and also using those hand traps to entrap the opponent. And also the Vanquish Hole really adds 4 card advantages extremely well. They do have a lot of draws and adds. So also the deck is quite consistent, no? The Vanquish Hole is very consistent on their own accord, and you can also mix other engines like Sinful Spoils on the deck. I do have seen Vanquish Hole with Snake Eyes on our community, and it's really crazy that there's a lot of things that you can do on the deck because this is very spacious, and you can literally form your deck based on your playstyle. Moving on towards the D tier, the last deck on our D tier, we have Manadium. So, on first glance, I do think that Manadium is very strong like other combo decks here like Manadium and, rather, Adamantipator and Super Heavy, rather, Pendulum Magician. I do think that it's also very combo oriented and can definitely build a very powerful board moving forward. But the downside is Droll and Lockbird is very popular in the Philippines. Most people are playing Droll on their main deck in side deck because they can counter the Fluandris and Chimera extremely well. So yeah, I think Droll is the bane of Manadium, and I don't think that it will change that way. And most people will still include Droll on their main deck, especially on high tier events, because they're expecting a lot of Fluandris and other combo decks to play on that tournament. So I think it's really easy to play Manadium on high stake events, but on locals I do think that Manadium is very strong, and most people doesn't have outs to play against the board of Manadium. You can really struggle on Droll and other cards like Nibiru, and also on the side deck you can definitely lose against Dark Ruler No More and Droplet. But on normal game states, I do think that Manadium does have an upper hand due to having too much gas on the deck. Moving on towards the C tier. So at first we have Pendulum Magician. So this is the Pendulum Magician Pure Raw version. The Pure Raw version is more successful than the Z-Arc Magician in our Philippines metagame scene. I wonder why, to be honest, because the Z-Arc version is much more better on explosiveness and resiliency. But the Pendulum Magician offers distinct quality of gameplay that is made simple and more linear, and I think people love that in our country. They don't want to overcomplicate things using this Pendulum Magician, especially Pendulum is already complicated on their own. The summoning mechanic, the playthrough and lines that you are going to invest on a combo deck like Pendulum decks are very stressful enough, so they don't want to suffer from that exhaustion on this deck. So yeah, I think people are experimenting on the Pendulum Magician, whether they play it on a pure version or with Z-Arc and other cards like Supreme King. So yeah, I think Pendulum Magician is in a good state right now. But if you're going to account all of the Metabit decks, control decks, stun decks in our country, I do think that it will definitely suffer on that department because Summon Limit, Anti-Spell Fragrance, and other floodgate cards like Skill Drain are very evident on the side deck of many people in our country, and our country is very infested by back row players. So I think you will struggle around those matchups, and it will be very dicey if you will be paired around those opponents. So yeah, I think it's very hard to tell whether this deck can be successful on regular tournaments. But yeah, on high stake events, many people have been doing so much for the deck, like Nazario. He piloted the Pendulum Magician, and other premier players have tapped using the Pendulum Magician. So I think this deck have rooms for success in our metagame. Next we have Branded. So another deck here on C tier, and I think Branded has been really okay on the past few weeks. There's a lot of Branded representations on the Uncrowned Kings, and also on the general consensus of OCG metagame on the Road of the King. So Branded has been a solid deck on the C tier and D tier for quite some time now, and I think it will be an acid test for Branded on our upcoming event on Nexus event, something that is going to be here in the Philippines on March 23. And I do think that it will be an event for Branded to test how Branded is capable enough to beat the best decks out here. And yeah, I think Branded have a good matchup around Fire King and other decks like Snake Eyes and Chimera, because they also have too much gas. They can outplay and outmaneuver the boards of the best decks right now, and they can play through extremely well around the boards of Snake Eyes and Fire King. That's why I think it can be a good counter to address those matchups. And also, Branded can be quite diverse, no? You can play the Branded on a Gimmick Lock Puppet, and Gimmick Lock is really annoying to play against. It's a stun method that is played by Branded, and also Branded can also be played on 60 card grass version, which has more gas but less consistent, no? And yeah, I think moving forward, Branded can still be a very competitive deck, especially the deck is being proven by time in our previous formats in the OCG. Next, we have a new deck on our post-Lede format. We have Melodious. So this deck was supported from Lede or Legacy of Destruction. So Melodious have been quite solid. I have seen a lot of representations of Melodious on local tournaments, ranking tournaments, official tournaments, and they're trying to pilot this deck on big events as well. But yeah, I think I have seen little to none success of Melodious on big events recently. But I think that's a factor where the experience of players plays on, because people are not really experienced on the deck yet, and they're still figuring out how to pilot the Melodious extremely well. And I think it will take time for them to really adjust themselves on playing the deck and formulate the proper deck list and approach of playing Melodious in our Philippines metagame. And I think Melodious does have a lot of potential moving forward, and it can definitely be consistent. It has a lot of starters like the Ostinato and the Movement Solo, and also the one card combos of Melodious can be also terrifying. And you can definitely mix and match other engines on the deck like the Supreme King Z-Arc, and I have seen other Melodious decks like Matmech Melodious. So you can definitely be creative on the deck, and I think it's a huge asset for Melodious because it can really improve the performance and the representations of this deck moving forward. Moving towards the B tier, we have Runic. So Runic has been a stable on the OCG metagame, not only in the Philippines, because most people can resort themselves into playing stun if they don't really feel playing the best decks out there. They can just shift themselves into playing stun like Runic. So I don't think that Runic will eventually go away in our metagame, especially people are still playing Runic because you do have a lot of consistency cards. You have the SARS, the rather Duality, and also the Demise. As long as those cards are still valid on the Runic, I don't think that Runic will still perform, and it's hard to beat this deck, to be honest. And if you don't have outs to their draw, plus and advantages on this deck, I think you will definitely fall behind on card advantages and plus advantages of this Runic. And also the Floodgate is a major issue. You do have a lot of floodgates like Synchro Zone and the Rivalry, Goes in Match. There can be only one skill drain. All of those stuff can be very effective on game 1, especially people are not maining back row removals in the main deck because you will lose space for hand traps to address the Fire King and Snake Eyes matchup and Voiceless Voice. And yeah, I think it is very hard to pull off that performance around Runic on game 1 because you lose too much cards on the main deck from the banishing effects of Runic. And also the time rules can be very beneficial for the Runic because they can gain life points towards the end of the match using the gain LP of their fusion monster. So they can win on time, they can stun you, they can stall the game, and it's everything that a people with cancerous trait can do in a tournament setting where you need to be very hard match up for most people. So yeah, moving towards our B tier, We have Centurion. So Centurion has been very diverse. Many people are playing Centurion on pure version with floodgates like Dimension Fissure and also Kaiser Colosseum, and some people are playing Centurion with Horse Engine as well. So it really depends on them. There's a lot of variations of Centurion right now, but I do prefer the Floodgate one because Centurion is not that fast enough to compete against the Snake Eyes, the Fire Kings, and I think they need to have avenues like the Floodgates to control the tempo of the match on their own accord. And I do think that Centurion is quite decent on their own. Most people have reached high representations and tops on the recent tournaments like the Kaido Willis Rookie Cup. It is won by Centurion by Kenneth Mercader, and the most recent Kaido Willis big event of year-end tournament was won by Apollo Velarde using Centurion as well. So I really think that Centurion can shine on a huge scale tournament because the deck is very consistent. You can definitely play around the metagame of your scene by mix and matching hand traps on the deck and catering floodgates and adding engines to empower the deck. So yeah, I think Centurion is very strong right now. And next we have Fluandris, another timely deck on our OCG metagame. And Fluandris players are really a pesky one because they have been playing the deck since 2021, since the Bar State U unban and rather ban on the format. They are not giving up on the deck because Fluandris is a deck that is quite easy to play but hard to pull up victories on this deck because most people anticipate you already on matchups like in the Philippines you have Droll and Lockbird and variations of hand trap like Imperm Veiler to stop the deck, and it's already precedented, no? You have a lot of targets on your back using Fluandris, but they're still playing the deck, and I can definitely vouch for them. People like Jonard Cabantog on our Philippine metagame still plays Fluandris, and other dedicated pilots like MJ Agura really plays the deck extremely well. So I do think that Fluandris is still in a strong position to play on our format right now, and it is a very strong deck to combat the Snake Eyes and Fire King because you can stun the opponent by your Shifter, of course, and Fissure, and those two cards are enough to win the game against those decks. So moving on towards the 8th tier, we have Snake Eyes. So this is the Snake Eyes in full spoils, and I think it can definitely perform better than what I am seeing right now. I think if people does have the Snake Eyes engine already, they do have the bonfires, they would rather play the Fire King version because it's much more better. But yeah, I don't think that you should people should take account for the Snake Eyes representations right now because it is still a very powerful deck, and I would rate the deck higher on this tier list if they do have much more representations in our metagame. But yeah, I think it's a little worse than Fire King's version because you do lose around Nibiru. Nibiru is very impactful to you, and you are much more prone to Droll and Lockbird than usual, and also Maxi, of course. You can definitely be shut down by Maxi, and other hand traps that are relevant like Veiler, Imperm can shut you down as well. So it's a more fragile version of Snake Eyes deck, unlike the Fire King that is more resilient. So yeah, I think this is a very potent deck on the meta right now. If people will invest their knowledge and efforts towards Snake Eyes, I think it will be higher than this, and I have seen a lot of good pilots already top with this deck with Martin Owen Caleja and Tan Vargas, also very strong Snake Eyes player, and I think Snake Eyes would be better if people invest more effort on the deck, and more people will be what do you call this encouraged to play the deck as well. But yeah, moving forward, we have Chimera. So Chimera have been a really powerhouse, really strong powerhouse in our OCG metagame scene in the Philippines. We have Chito Racimo winning the BLS Normal Monster Tournament recently, last January, using his Chimera Horse deck, and also on the local tournaments are dominated by Chimera as well. We have Renz Ponko winning second place on the recent Azrak tournament, and also Sean Quijano winning second place as well on the recent Rookie Cup in our Kaido Willis community. So Chimera has been splendid for the most part on the recent weeks and months already in the January format. So Chimera has been quite a mid-range deck, no? They do have a lot of room on the main deck. You can play the Chimera with Horus, and you can also play Barrier State of Dark in the Chimera to stun the opponent. And also, the Illusionist really complemented the Chimera. The support from Lede boosted the consistency and resiliency of Chimera. So I do think that Chimera is very strong right now. And if you're trying to compete against the format, I think Chimera is a good deck for you. Next, moving forward, we have Tenpai. So Tenpai, another new deck from Lede. Most people are sleeping on the deck on the first 2 weeks or 3 weeks on the format, but they have really understood now that Tenpai is a very formidable deck on our OCG, and there's a lot of tops already of Tenpai from local tournaments to big event tournaments. I think Tenpai have been pretty solid on that department. Regarding to the fact that people are already expecting Tenpai to go second, and they most likely play Tenpai going first. If they have faced Tenpai, they will let the opponent go first, especially if they're playing Tenpai. But yeah, I think the hand trap version of Tenpai is really phenomenal right now, and I think the hand trap version is better than the board breaker version of Tenpai, because you do have more rooms for error on that version, and also much more better when going first, because you do have a lot of hand traps to stop the opponent. If you can end on Seal's Pass, you still have hand traps on your hand to stop the opponent, unlike the board breaker where you end on Seal's Pass and your Lightning Storms, Droplet, and other going second cards does nothing on your hand. So yeah, I think hand trap version is better than the board breaker. Moving towards the S tier, this is a surprise for me because I have seen Fire King fall off behind Voiceless Voice, because Fire King is for me the undisputed best deck on the OCG format, and I cannot really deny that fact because it's been proven already on the recent Road of the King reports and other metagame reports in the OCG. Fire King has been the dominant best deck on those reports, and I think the only reason why Voiceless Voice is higher than Fire King is because of the expensive nature of the deck. You need to invest Bonfire, you need to invest on Snake Eyes package, on the Sinful Spells package. You need to invest a lot of money to play Fire King, Snake Eyes, Sinful Spells. So I think it really backfired on our community because Philippines is not that rich in terms of economy. This is a third world country, and most people doesn't have the money to buy the expensive cards of Fire King right now. So Voiceless Voice is much more accessible to us. The only expensive one are the Diviner package and Garura on the extra deck. So Voiceless Voice is much more convenient to us. But I would not take anything away from Fire King because Fire King is legitimately the best deck out there. And if people does have a budget to play Fire King, I think they will definitely go with Fire King. But on the other hand, they don't have that much budget to play, so that's why they have resorted to playing Voiceless Voice. But Fire King is very phenomenal. It has a lot of follow-ups and can easily break boards going second, and you are also much more better against hand traps on this deck, unlike the Snake Eyes variant, which loses bad against Nibiru and Roll, and also Veiler and Imperm. So I think you do have more avenues to play around hand traps, and it's really hard to stop the Fire King, to be honest. It has a lot of interactions and follow-ups, so it's very hard to break the board of Fire King and defeat it on a single turn. Next, on the S tier, we have the best deck out there. In our tier list right now, we have Voiceless Voice. So I myself have been playing Voiceless Voice for quite some time already, since January. So I think Voiceless Voice is the version that deck that should be in the OCG. Quite cheap. You can play the deck cheap and still be competitive. I think it's a very good card design, to be honest. And also the deck doesn't seem really unfair, no? When you consider the fact that Fire King and Snake Eyes puts up 7 to 9 interruptions on a single turn, I think Voiceless Voice doesn't compare to that. The only problem of people against Voiceless Voice is the high beat stick monster of Skull Guardian and also the protection from targeting effects from the barrier. So I think Voiceless Voice in general is a fair deck compared to Snake Eyes and Fire King right now. But yeah, I think Voiceless Voice have been the go-to option of many people in the Philippines. That's why it is number 1 on our tier list. But I don't think Voiceless Voice is better than Snake Eyes or Fire King. And even Tenpai, I don't rate Voiceless Voice higher than that. And to be honest, I think it will definitely lower down on the previous, on the latter tournament results and analysis, because I do think that people will pick up Tenpai more in our country, and the big event is very near as well, so people will invest more money towards the game, so they will definitely buy something like Snake Eyes and Fire King to achieve greater success. So yeah, that sums up our OCG Metagame tier list by me. So yeah, thank you for watching this video. I hope you do learn something from this video, and I think this video can be informative to you guys, especially for our people in the Philippines. So once again, thank you for the continued patronage on my YouTube channel. So see you on the next one. Peace.